art is such a beautiful thing, because to me, it's like you're pressed up against our creator. Like you're
Yeah.
literally waiting for those drips, and it's like you're right there. And it's such a spiritual act to create. You're practicing trust, vision, surrender. There's so many variables of a spiritual practice that
It
art
is. It's a spiritual
facilitates
practice. And it's a
that.
practice, ideally, folks, you take that from the art studio into your life.
Welcome to the Spiritual Artist Podcast. This is Chris Miller. I invite you to join me as I interview artists from a variety of disciplines. We'll share powerful stories and lessons learned while making their art.
Good day, spiritual artists. This is CJ Miller, the host of the Spiritual Artist Podcast. I just got back from my retreat in Santa Fe, and I'm kind of dragging a little bit, but boy, my excitement is coming up to par. I've met this next interview online maybe about 6 months ago, and we chatted online and we kind of put this in a pocket to do him as a podcast, but I have been watching him on Instagram, and I think he just did a solo show, and I want to unpack that with him because I love his work. I love his work. And so if you're watching this on YouTube, hopefully he'll send me some images and I can weave them into the video. So today I'm excited to introduce artist and spiritual creator Ariel Basso. Ariel has chosen a nomadic lifestyle, guided entirely by his devotion to expressing the divine through art, not just in paint and found objects, but also through music and vibration. And listeners, you know that I'm really big on music, so I can't wait to unpack that with him. He's a rock hound, an instructor of ancient wind instruments, and has spent over 2 decades facilitating vibrational sound therapy. And that's another thing I can't wait to talk about. Ariel carries a profound story of spiritual transformation. I can't wait for you to hear this story. I can't wait to talk to him. Good day, Ariel. How are you?
Oh, thank you, my brother. I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for having me on your wonderful podcast, and to all your listeners, sending you a lot of love and a lot of appreciation. Thank you so much.
Well, it's funny. There's so much to talk about. I don't know where to start, but I want to start with your recent show. Is it still live? Is it still on exhibit or?
So over here, it's currently down, but anyone can visit my art studio. I have we just actually had this past weekend. It's called Open Studios, where all of Palm Beach County, they're on a map, all the studios, and you can go and studio hop. So we just had that this weekend, but my studio is always open for anyone to come over and chat and take a look at my latest works and some of the previous works that have yet to sell. But yeah, always open. And I'm on Northwood Art and Music Warehouse, which is in West Palm Beach.
I have to. I'm gonna be for fully disclose here that I was looking at your website last night, and little Chris is jealous. He really is because I love this. What I teach on my retreats is I use the Semitic writing to help people uncover a language.
Mhm.
And you very clearly have a language in your work. There's symbols and shapes. Where do they come from?
For me to Okay, so that's an interesting question. The way I'll tell you the story is there was a period A, and I guess, and then period B,
Uh-huh.
where, and it all stemmed from my spiritual paradigm shift. At the age of 17 and 18, I went through some of the darkest periods of my life. I had 4 deaths in my family, and then my dad became paralyzed. It was so deep, the depression, that I can recall back when, that I used to look at people laughing and smiling, and I was so far removed from that for 2 years that I remember telling myself, when am I going to smile again? When am I going to laugh again? And it was just like this period. I felt like I was just like kind of in like a mental screensaver, like just like,
Yeah.
you know, and until that one day where I hit complete utter rock bottom. Mind you, at that period of time, I grew up in the church. I used to play music at different churches. I was an altar boy in my early life, which, if you ask me anything about that, it's kind of, I was still in a mental screensaver. But, so then then I became like atheist. I was rejecting everything. And in this period of time where I was really dark, and I was in the shower, and I had the water running over me, and I just I would just declared it with all my might, all my force. I was like, whatever created me, whatever that is, I need you to come into my life right now, not tomorrow, right at this very moment. And Chris, this tingling sensation just started overwhelming my legs, my hips, all the way to my shoulders, to the point I plopped over the tub. Water's running. Now, mind you, I couldn't speak, but I was aware of what was happening. And previously to that, a few months earlier, my dad had just had a stroke. So I
Oh,
thought I was having that.
yeah.
My mom opens the door, finds me in the floor laying down. And I always think about this time, like, imagine if my mom would have taken me to the hospital, and I would have been pumped with drugs. Maybe this wouldn't have happened the way it did. But what she did was she picked me up, and I asked to be placed in my bed to go to sleep. Chris, the next morning when I woke up, there was something I felt immediately. But I went up to the edge of my bed, and man, 2 years of pent up non-laughter
Mm.
erupted out of nowhere. It was just like flooding. I get like I may even tear up a little bit.
Yeah,
Just
goosebumps. I'm getting goosebumps listening to your story, so I could just imagine, right?
oh man, and I can relive it every moment I say it. So I get this, what some people call samadhi experience, or what, just this massive flood of just laughter, not coming from anywhere but from inside. Just, and I remember it must have been like 20, 25 minutes of this going on. And it was so much that I felt like I had run a marathon. Like I was just like panting afterwards. And I was like, what just happened? The moment I said, what just happened? An internal voice comes in and starts instructing me. And the first thing it said was, I'm not, I'm very attached to my books, my music, my art supplies, my journal, very minimal, but still, these are the things I value. And these are the things that I was instructed to give to my mom, and have her and ask her to only feed me once a day. So and my mom, so beautifully, she obliged, and no questions. That's why I give so much thanks to how my mother supported even all the uh, surreal things that I'd come up with. So, so she did that. And I call this time that I was kind of in a spiritual boot camp. I didn't know nothing. I didn't know anything of anything. But I was instructed to sit in my room for 2 weeks, listen, pray, meditate, stretch, and journal. And at that time, even now, those practices I've never not done. And when you ask me about where did these symbols come from, so, or where did this thing, at those 2 weeks, I made a declaration where my previous work, I started doing artwork even before I can label it as such, that I was doing art. I've always done it. But I've always done, like, I also drew my pain and the sorrow. So at that very moment, I said, from here on out, everything I do for you is always to be able to point my compass towards your creation, your celebration of the spirit, unity. Anything that has to do with because I always say, I can paint you a tree, but I will be never to be able to make you a tree. Everything I do is for the maestro. So I made that declaration, and everything I've ever done. With that comes what I call the divine breadcrumbs. Slowly, these little pieces starts, like, remember in E.T. when he's following the Reese's Pieces?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like that. That's how I feel like it's a little bit of that.
Yeah.
going, and it's been unfolding ever since. And it's always a dialogue with the creator. You know, it's a constant dialogue, and I feel like Stephen Pressfield writes in his book, The War on Art. He says, the more you show up for the muse and entertain it, the more it gives you gifts. It keeps on giving you gifts. And it's like, I don't know if I ever want to fully know. I'm just enjoying the excitement of what it is to be a childlike excitement, you know, that of creation along the journey. But it's always given me all these beautiful, but what has helped me, oh, and that's one of the things I said, it's like, I don't ever want to put anything of that's a stillness on a still frame that's looking back at me, that it's of depression, agony. I don't want that to be, if I need to process that, interesting enough that I play wind instruments, I can facilitate that through my wind instruments, like let it breathe out through my work.
Oh, how
But if
interesting.
I
So
have that
you let yourself do it with the music.
with the music, while the art is more a celebratory homage to the creator.
You know, I interviewed a guy twice. He's up on the East Coast, Alex Cook. He's a muralist, highly spiritual. And he talked about this, and it reminds me of what you were saying. He said, and I do believe this, we can all paint our emotions, and sometimes they are dark. But he said at one point in his life, he suddenly decided that he wanted to only paint joy, and
Yes,
that it's a choice,
it's a
that
choice.
we are at choice with what emotion we want to materialize or manifest, you know.
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
and 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 listeners, I'm not saying don't feel your emotions, because art is an incredible tool to feel pain and to work through loss and to suffer illness. It really is.
Yeah.
But there's also that neat thing about, right, just, hey, I want this to be a joyful expression.
Yeah. I find and you're absolutely dead on. The way is it's always good to get it out, whether it's, you know, dancing, creating
Music.
music, artwork. Um, I also believe, you know, I have this thing called Project Sacred Life, and that it's a project. I call it project because I think our life is a project. It's a building on experiences, the people we meet, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything, and it's a building. It's not like, you know, we're so quick to want to put our flag and say that this is it. When since I look at it as a project, it allows me, it gives me space to build upon my experiences. And the reason I put it sacred life is that that's the intention, that's the incantation I'm creating for my life. It's a project, and it is a sacred life to me, because this go around is only one of one. You know,
Right.
you
Well,
know.
would you just find that as your purpose or like your
I,
mission?
I it's my mission. It's my vision and mission, I like to say. And it helps me, it helps me keep my lighthouse pointed to know where my ship is going, because even though I do multiple different styles in different mediums, if you're able to pull back, the overarching mantra is of giving thanks to our creator, and uplifting the spirit, uplifting the human spirit. So, and anything I can do to facilitate that, I'm here.
Well, you know what? I love that. I love this story. What I see in your work that little Chris
Yeah.
is envious of, but he's working on himself. When I have people on retreat, what I try to teach people as a spiritual artist is to find your authentic language and to express it. You are expressing your authentic language so unabashedly, so courageously. I mean, you see it in the marks, you see it in the decision. You're not doing commercial work. You're not like, oh, I know this will sell, so I'm doing it. You are doing work that it comes from the spirit within, and comes out on, and you can see it in the uniqueness of the line, the shapes, the icons, the color choices, and the fact that you're so daring. I really saw it. You know, users check out his website, but just the difference of styles.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, brother. I appreciate you saying that. I do believe that uh, you know, all of our, every artist, I believe that we're all single digits of the same hand.
Right.
There's an infinite well of inspiration that we all tap into it. And how cool and exciting is to see others express art creators, like it's creation creating itself. It's like
Yes.
I get so jazzed up about other people doing it because it's like, wait, their life story, their journey is getting expressed. And I find it very exciting. And I think it's a powerful thing when we're able to acknowledge one another, because we're also acknowledging the maestro,
Right.
and it's fascinating. So I appreciate you saying that, truly.
Yeah, I love it, and I see that so clearly that I call it an individualized expression of God. You know, you're an individualized expression of God, and so I look at your work and I go, wow. And you know, I've come from my background. I'll share is I have a graphic design background, and I come from shapes and composition, and I've slowly. What I do is when I do these systemic marks, I've started realizing that there's a language to it.
Yeah, there is.
And I one day I was painting, I'm like, this is a language of shape,
Mhm.
not words.
Yeah.
Do you find I was looking at your art. Do you find some of the shapes coming back and back and back, like you gravitate?
So he, so what's funny about this? It's funny you asked that, because a few months ago, I had two of my studio mates. They're in the next studio. So the compound that I'm in, it's a collective of different artists. It's a beautiful movement, what's happening here. And two of the studio mates, in two different times, they came up and and they go, Ariel, I've been looking at your symbols, some of the symbolism that you come, and I can't see you repeat. There's no repeating on that. And they both told me, and I never, it's like, I'll do it, move on, like I just, on to the next. I'm in search for those Reese's pieces, you know what I mean?
Right.
For the breadcrumbs. And so when I look at that, um, I'm like, I'm curious about it, because I have yet to see it, even if it almost looks, it takes a different form. It'll take a different avenue at the end. So what I will say is that the intentional, I do, for symbolic intention and symbolic reason, the circle. I've read many moons ago about the ancient mystery schools, about what they used to do to kind of create a portal into the other realms, to gather information, whether you call it the Akashic, whether you call it light codes, fill in the blank.
Yeah.
The symbol of, so what they would do is that they would get a piece of paper or whatever they had. It would be a circle with a dot in the middle, and 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 just gaze at it,
Oh, how
gaze
interesting.
at it, and meditate on it. And eventually, what was instructed to me intuitively was to put a candle in front of it. So I would sit there and let the candle wick hit the middle of the dot. And then the aura is the exterior dot. And what I have found for myself in meditation is that creates an intentional, it's almost really, it's a very mystical, mysterious thing, where it's almost like you start foreseeing different elements of what you're going to be doing. And also, as for me, it's expedited some of especially when I'm doing found objects. In your mind, you have this thing this would be cool if it fits right here.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it springboards, and there you are in front of the thing that you had in your mind's eye. So that is one tool that I've used, but I do a lot of circles for that reason, as a meditative focal point, if one chooses.
All right, so I have to clarify this for the listener. So are you putting the circle on a vertical surface in front of you or flat?
flat on the wall,
Okay, on the wall, flat on a wall. And
flat
the
on the wall,
candle isn't
in
between
front of it.
you, in front of it.
Yep.
And are you painting around that candle
No, no, no. So
or
no,
drawing?
this is only for meditation purposes.
Oh,
This is not when I'm painting. This is more like um, e- every time I come into my studio, you know, people go to church. This is
your
uh,
church.
where I'm putting every little thing. My light of my incense, my candle. There's a process that I do, and sometimes at the end of my night, kind of like to pray and to send my gratitude for everything I've created for that day. I'll also do that practice where I'll put a piece of paper with a circle with a dot in the middle, and then the candle maybe a foot or 2 feet in front of it, where the candle wick is right on the dot, and then the aura kind of encompasses
Ah, so
how
do you meditate by
just
focusing on the aura?
by just letting my eyes gaze, just like kind of like when your eyes just kind of just blends mends
Yeah, soft gaze kind of.
pause off gaze, and just kind of go into like almost like a inner self hypnosis where you're just like relaxing into the flame and just kind of pouring your gratitude for creation, because the circle does mean completion, cycle. There's so much that the symbol of the circle. There's so much. There's so much spiritual. Uh, there's so much to it. When it comes to symbolism, at least. So.
Yeah, my most recent interview was with a woman that does mandalas, and she's in Florida also, and it's a great interview. Um, but when I went on my retreat, I was inspired by that, and also I did some reading. And so what we did as an icebreaker is I drew a circle on a piece of paper, and I put a point right in the middle, and I had three people each taking about 35% of that circle, and they started doodling. And then I told them, I'm not going to tell you when to rotate it, but I want you as a group to feel the need to rotate it. So you might be working on section one, and then 5 seconds later, section two, because you keep rotating it as you doodle.
Yeah.
Um,
It's awesome.
and it was a really grounding exercise for them. They found that it was a great way to connect.
Mm,
So I think there's a lot of power in a circle, and
yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it is really interesting. What I see with your shapes too is sort of a meditation. Then do they
Yeah.
come out?
It is. It's a meditation. It's a communication. It's a dialogue too that I have found. It's a kind of like and if I think too much about it,
Yeah, yeah.
you know how it is.
Don't think about it.
No,
It's you really. I want to share that with the listeners. When you're making those shapes, you're not in your mind. You're in your consciousness, and I think your consciousness is much deeper than your mind. And so you don't. I don't think you're consciously saying, "Well, I'm going to make this shape differently." You're just feeling it, right?
Mhm,
You're
mhm.
just feeling the line, feeling where it goes,
Yeah.
and then you step back. I'm sure if you're like me, like a day later, you go, "What that? Where did that come from?"
Yeah, yeah. And that brings up a good point, because, as creators, and this thought just happened. I was thinking about this not too long ago. I'm like, yes, we're all single digits of the same hand. We all get inspiration from the same united field of infinite creation, from God. But I do think that you have and of course no one's better or more elite than the next. But I have seen a distinction that there's the artist, the painter that looks, let's say, at a landscape or a picture, and does this act, which to me is more might be more frontal, I guess, like this. And then you got the ones that like cut the parachute, and it's a free for all. It's like like the feather just coming down like that. You know what I mean? It's
Yes.
one more, and I think is that's why I art is such a beautiful thing, because to me it's like you're pressed up against our creator, like you're
Yeah.
literally waiting for those drips, and it's like you're right there, and it's such a spiritual act to create. You're practicing trust, vision, surrender, there's so many variables of a spiritual practice that
It
are
is. It's a spiritual
related.
practice. And it's a
Yeah.
practice, ideally, folks, you take that from the art studio into your life, right? Then when
Oh,
you go to
100%.
when you go to dinner with a friend, you if you step into that, like you said, non-judgment, surrender, listening, suddenly you're so much more present for that relationship with another person or a family or a
100%.
child, right?
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I totally agree. It's 100%. And one of the things that you know, since I'm a musician as well.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. That's the next coming
Oh, okay,
up because
okay,
I
okay.
go ahead. Because well, let's talk about that because you are a
Okay.
musician and there's emotion in your music.
Mhm.
Let's talk about how that music affects your art. Do you listen to music when you paint, or are you in a quiet
So,
room?
so it's funny because I when I look at other paintings, or painting in general, it doesn't matter if it's in a book. Doesn't There's something that opens up for me where I can hear compositions of other, like the Bach, or just Max Richter, just different composers, like, will infiltrate my mind while I'm looking at certain paintings, and I can see the soundtrack I can hear the soundtrack of these paintings, which is I've always tried to like reverse engineer that. I'm like, wait, so there must be more parallels in music and in art, and the more I think about it, being an artist, it's almost like a life hack. And I'll explain to you what I mean by that. I Because if you look at someone that doesn't create, and I'm not talking about just painting, I'm talking about anybody that creates something. I don't care if it's um building a sculpture out of toothpicks, whatever it is. There's a wave, like if you look at it musically, there's a waveform on how us artists operate. We go through life very much. If it was a waveform, I believe that the artist goes in a waveform like this, always seeking, searching, deconstructing, creating, just like this whole waveform. For the non-creators, they're usually in the where I tend to hear a lot, same old, same old. It's like they're going through life in a very much, like, I'm talking about, like, energetically, just like boom, maybe a little boom. The creator has such a fuller spectrum, I feel, of sensitivity to life, that I believe even if one even if one transcends at the age of 70, due to the fact that they've created for those 70 years, their experience of life is much older, much more fuller, in my opinion, because you observed life with much more, with detail, with curiosity, with with um, with exploration. So you're like, there's a spectrum of color that you brought into your life, where if you're not a creator, you might be missing, the other mediums that you can play with, you know.
Yes, I agree. I think I want to remind the listener. I think everybody's a creator,
Yeah,
and so what I love my um, goal in life is to help people discover that about themselves, and you're right, as they get more and more self-aware and self-conscious and kind of willing to step back and look at the patterns,
yeah,
you mentioned journaling earlier. It wasn't until I started journaling that I realized how my mind goes through loops. Like I would go back and read the pages, and it would be like, oh, on Tuesday I'm worried about money, and then 3 weeks later, on Tuesday I'm worried about money, and then right, the same fears, the same beliefs, the same
yeah,
limitations.
yeah,
And so a spiritual artist, I think, goes back and says, do I need to worry about money? You know, is that a spiritual truth, or can I let that go? What would happen in a
yeah.
state of curiosity? What would happen if I didn't?
Exactly, exactly, exactly.
And
Yeah,
it's funny, Ariel. Some of the times, you're talking about the. I wish some of the listeners, when he was talking about certain artists, they're like looking at something and then drawing it, and looking at something and drawing it. And what he was showing is that other artists just feel it. It's from within, and
within.
and it's within and comes out. And so that beauty of just, it's scary.
Yeah.
There is faith,
Yeah.
right?
There is so much, it's almost like you have to punch that dialogue of the insecurities, what's it going to look like, how people are going to look at it. It has to be fully embodied for you to come out with something pure, but it's an exercise. You're not going to get it in the first go around. It's a journey. It's a project, like we mentioned. It's not just, and I believe, and I'm so, like I've told you off camera, what you're doing is so valuable, and you're doing what the ancients also used to do. You're a steward to creating these paradigm shifts for people that are going to bring so much joy, love, curiosity, childlike energy, which
Right.
is healing. So I commend you again on camera, because I think it's very important because we all are we all are artists at the
Yes.
end. Who can tell me that when you were a kid and they put a box in front of you, an empty box, you were in there, and that was your
Yeah.
fort or your castle or whatever it was. We always create, our imagination was like, and I just think it's beautiful what you're doing. And so yeah, but music has always been facilitated for me. The the kind of what balances the art in a way. It kind of seesaws one another. If I'm not painting, I'm making music. If I'm not making music, I'm painting. So it's always like the seesaw.
It gives you a break. I think I'm the same way, Oni. I'm a writer. I'm a writer
Yeah.
and an artist. And so like I just got back from the retreat, and I'm not, I have no, I need a break from painting, right? I
Yeah.
started a painting behind me, and I'm like, okay, I just can't do that right now.
Yeah.
But I'm feeling
You
words.
know, and you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Yeah. I know, and I also know, don't force it. If
Yeah.
you do not feel the space of connection, don't force it. It's just you're going upstream.
Yeah.
So you play music and you paint. Have you ever like tried to play music while you paint?
That's an interesting concept there. I don't think, have I done that? Let me see. God,
You know, what'd be really cool is if you actually had some sort of way to to play music through the paint. Like,
that's
like I don't know
interesting.
if you did drums or something and you had this big sheet of
I'm gonna
paper,
work on that one, and I'll get back to you.
you put ink on those drum heads and you're boom, 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 right? I mean, it could be kind of impressive, you know?
I'll get back to you. I'll see what I can do, man. I love you. Challenge me for anything, man. I'm game.
We'll check back. Well, I try so I was going to tell you what I do on my retreats. You asked me earlier,
Yeah.
I don't use live music just because of not that I'm against it. It's the cost prohibitiveness of it, but I do, play music a lot. And when I do, and I find songs, for me, everybody's unique, but I find songs that are very emotional, not boring, but very deep emotions. So in Santa Fe, I will go over and put on a really sad song, a Van Morrison song, or you name it.
Yeah.
But what I do is I set the artists up next to each other, and I call it dueling a semic, where they're working on the same piece.
Oh, interesting.
So
Interesting.
Jackie hits it with one color, and then John will respond, and then Jackie responds. I'm trying to teach them to be in that moment,
Yeah. Yeah.
just in that moment without the mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
That's
also to be aware of how the music, and then suddenly, you know what I'll do, Ariel, is I literally stop it mid-song and I'll change the tempo. Like it will be this really sad, won't be song. Um, and then suddenly I'll change it to this really upbeat pop music from the 80s, da, 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 because I
yeah.
want them, what is it like when those different emotions are coming and
Mm.
going and coming and going?
What a great practice. What a great practice, because it does. And I'm sure you've seen it with your work. Your week to week, your days are different.
Every day, every minute.
Every minute, you're bringing what you're carrying into your work, and it can be a conversation with, someone a minute ago or 10 minutes ago, and then all of a sudden you get a phone call, And it's, if
Yes.
it doesn't have to be a song, it can be conversation. Boom, it triggers different sways in the sale. So yeah, I think it's great. What a great practice. What a
It's
great-
interesting, and I'll stop them and I'll go, "So how did that feel?" And invariably someone will be like, "It made me angry." Like, "Why did you I was enjoying that beautiful Bach, and suddenly
Yeah,
you changed it on me." And I'm like, "Wow, how," and what I'm trying to teach them is, how do you respond to that anger? How
exactly.
how do you respond to that anger? And it's really amazing. So you talked about this earlier. You talked about hearing words spoken to you, uh, and I believe, this is my own personal belief. I don't know how you. I believe that we all have different receivers, and some of us see images, some of us hear words, and some of us feel that there's an impulse to feel like where you're going to paint next.
Of
Do
course.
you feel like, and I think we're all three.
Yeah.
Do you hear a lot of words?
So you're dead on. That's something that I've thought about, where the writer will be possibly more inclined to like read something on a billboard, and all of a sudden they gravitate. The painter will see an image. The musician will hear something. Like, I think, like you said, our instruments are all tuned in to certain beats and frequencies that pulls us in. Like, there's things that people will miss next to me, but I will catch it. And then, but they will find something
Different.
soulful and something different. And it's just like, it's like, that's, I find that so exciting. And that's what, where creating itself constantly. It's so fascinating. So it's multifaceted, multidimensional, and it's just now one thing. And to invite that into one's life is like, all right, put your astronaut helmet on. We're going on an exploration.
Right.
It's, how exciting is that?
And be willing to see where it takes you.
Of course, of course.
You're just letting go and going, okay, all right, so I'm going to do this. Like I was talking to you earlier, I did a service at a Unity church this weekend, and afterwards I was almost, I couldn't talk. People were like, "Well, how was it?" And I
You were
and
just buzzing.
yeah, I was like, I don't know how to explain it. It's just this energy flows through me, and I feel it, and it's an incredible charge, and I let it happen. And but it's sort of like, I don't know, it's like it's like letting little Chris step aside
Mhm.
and letting my higher self, or my connection to all that is, just come through. I was like that for like an hour.
Yeah, yeah.
you know
That's so good, man. That's that's soul food, man. That's definitely soul food. You know,
yeah.
that you're getting nourished by the great divine, and it's just and that happens when people live on purpose. With they're singing their song, their inner song, and they're doing, as scary as it is, being able to do the work that you're meant to do. It's like, it doesn't matter. Like, I've always said it, if the day that I leave, if the only thing I have is one paintbrush, mission complete.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've done the work. So I find it it's a beautiful thing, and I can see it. I saw it in your eyes. You're lit up by it, but also in a state of bliss.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing.
I've been focusing on this word joy lately.
Yeah.
Joy. It's in a space of joy. And I will tell you, Ariel, it sounds like were you raised Catholic?
I was raised Catholic. I was an altar boy for 8 years. Left that and played trumpet in a Baptist church.
Oh my gosh.
And
Catholic to Baptist. That's
I've
like,
been, it was, I'll tell you one thing, the Baptist folks, they know how to party.
ah.
They know how to party. And so, yeah, so yeah, I've been through my circuit of churches, and now I have my spiritual practice, and my devotional act is everything I create. So,
I feel the same way. I even, what I find surprising is, because I come from a Catholic background, and I was I learned some great things from it, but was also burned by it because I was gay, or I am gay, and I had to deal with that. When I find myself up on stage like that, I'm like,
Mhm.
who the heck is this guy? I'm
Wow.
still, but I've realized too that we limit ourselves with words. And when I sit there on stage and I say, God is guiding you, I mean, creative intelligence is
Yeah,
guiding you.
exactly.
It's the same thing,
Yeah, yeah. Great spirit, light,
right? Whatever words
the
you want
knowledge,
to
whatever.
use.
Normally when people come to the studio, that's one of the things I always say, this is truly my devotional act to our creator. You can fill in the blank for yourself. That's up to you, whatever you want to fill it in. This for me is uh for creation. And or the Grand Maestro, as I said it. So yeah, it's a beautiful poetic act of all this. It's
It,
fascinating.
it is. It's funny. I was talking to a woman last week. She was with a magazine, and she was asking me what I do, and this is the energy that I deal with sometimes. Is she goes, well, I'm a Christian, and I could feel this, I don't know, lines. Let's just say a line being
Yeah,
drawn. And I said, well, this is my ministry. And it's the same word. It is a ministry. It's what I do. It's how I administer. And ironically, even though I felt aligned with her, she said, well, that makes sense. It
yeah,
is,
yeah,
it's your ministry. It's your calling. It's what you believe. And,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
And you cannot, you know, um, those hard lines
yeah.
are they sometimes, and I see it with everything these days,
Oh,
especially we're in an age where everything's so polarized, and where you know I have this real deep inner belief that in the times that we're in, where everything is so polarized and people wanting to put a hard line in the sand, let's try to lift that veil and look at, you know, we're not about teams, political views. We're not about demographics. We're not about spiritual beliefs. I feel more than blood brothers. What's keeping you alive, that breath that's keeping you alive is the same breath that's keeping me alive. You and I are brothers in breath, brothers and sisters of breath. Something that's keeping us all alive. How deep is that connection? And instead of doing my team, your team, all this, it's like we need to go back to the most basic thing, that we're all here in this beautiful earth coexisting and trying to do the best we can with what we have in front of us. And I believe that now that we have to be a little bit more cautious as artists, as people, as humans, that now with the technology, the advancement of technology that we're in, now they've figured out algorithms for each and every one of us. So they know how to pull our levers
oh
when they
yeah.
want. And I was just talking to a friend of mine that his stress and emotions are so at a peak and I can feel it. And I'm like, let me remind you that what you see on social media, a lot of those are bots pulling your lever. Try to separate and go into the world, the spirit of it all. It's not about teams, nor demographics, no nothing. It's about our that what fills your lungs fills my lungs. Keeping you alive, it's keeping me alive. You and I are brothers of breath.
Mm,
That's how much, that's how deep it even goes. It's not about teams. It never, it don't,
never
we
was. It never was.
never
Yeah.
was. We can't
Yeah.
let the algorithm dictate, because I see that too often. And it's sad for me because I believe that if we're ever to pierce through that, even when you're doing sacred union with a partner, the hard conversations, the hard talks, the hard things, it's what creates deeper intimacy. If you're able to communicate and be clear without non-judgment, and the other side of that is a deeper connection to that person. So I just hope that for humanity, we go back to our breath. that you and I share, that all of us share.
Mm. That's wonderful. That's two goosebumps in one conversation that you gave me. So no, that is wonderfully put. And when the woman, when she said that, I said, I define myself as I'm Christian and more.
Yeah.
you know, and more.
Squared.
Yes, because I see many paths and I see all paths and
Yeah,
I see a unity,
yeah, yeah.
and I love that, a unity of breath. So there's one last thing we haven't unpacked a little bit, and I saw it in your list, and I want you to share it a little bit. You talk in your bio about vibrational sound therapy.
Yeah.
So how?
So when going back to the beginning of the conversation where the spiritual paradigm shift occurred for me, that one day the lights were off, the next day the lights were on. It all started, I was like, there was no social media. So I felt like a lone wolf in Miami. Like, what is happening internally with me? I don't know. So I reached out to a cousin of mine that I knew she played around with the angelic realm and stuff like that. And I'm like, this is going on with me. What should I do? She goes, something? The Mind Body Expo. I'm going back. This was 1998.
Wow.
Mind Body Expo was happening in Fort Lauderdale that year. Why don't you call them and see if you can volunteer? And because I'm sure you'll find your community to kind of express what you're going through, and they'll help you facilitate more of an understanding. And I did. I went to volunteer. And what's interesting, which we can get into a little bit of the mystical part of that. A week before I go there, I was walking down Lincoln Road in South Beach, and my eye catches Doreen Virtue's angel cards, the one that she created back when, the first one. And had something about it. I opened up the card, I shuffled it. First one that came up, Divine Guidance. I felt like I had to buy it, so I bought it, put it in my backpack. I go to this volunteer at this expo, and they had me, so I was his gopher for the weekend, Dr. Wayne Dyer.
Oh, get out. Really?
I didn't even know who he was
Oh my God. How
at the
could you?
time. And then he
Wow.
became my greatest mentor.
Oh.
The weekend, I was his water boy, go get my, but I was able to hang out with him. And then in one of the breaks that we had, I was walking around the convention. And I'm going to circle it back to the music because it's all part of the same time.
It's okay. We got time. We got time.
Okay. So I'm here walking around and I see a booth. And it said, Doreen Virtue. And I'm like, I look at my cards, I'm like, Doreen Virtue. So I go up to her and I go, I just bought these cards, and I shuffled them again in front of her, and I pulled out again, Divine Guidance. So she signed on that Divine Guidance card, and she was like, that's funny because my book is named Divine Guidance. That's the book that she had written. Fast forward 2 weeks later, I get tickets in the mail to go spend 10 days in a workshop with her in Chicago. Mysteriously, how things happen, I'll just leave it at that. But during that time, I heard a sound. I was in that walking around after meeting Doreen Virtue. I was walking around at the convention center, and I hear the first time I ever heard a didgeridoo or a didgeridoo. So I hear a didgeridoo being played, and I just like
haunting. It is. It's haunting.
Where's that sound? But what's interesting is that I looked at the didgeridoo, but the Native American flute is what, like, it looked familiar to me. Like, it looked like I've touched that before. So I picked up the native flute, and I was already sensitive to it. Like, I played it like I had been playing it for some years. To the guy was like, is this your first time playing? I'm like, and so I bought a beautiful grandfathered flute that I only had one for 13 years to literally make sure that I knew this instrument in and out before I started picking up all the other siblings. Now I have 28 of them. And
Gosh.
but how I got into doing vibrational therapy is because since I always played for myself, always played for myself. I went to the beach. My mother had lost her eyesight, and I went to the beach to pray and to play my flute. And I remember playing, and I had a vision of my mother smiling. Mind you, that flute was my personal sacred instrument for me. But that was the first time I ever had the idea of playing for other people. So then I would go and play for her. And then, but as on the beach, and I see her image of her face, and I play, and I finish playing, a lady that was behind me was listening to me. As soon as she goes, "Would you like to do that for the youth, that are troubled youth?" And so immediately I went from not playing to playing for people, and which now I've gone to Costa Rica to play and been to all over the country playing. And now I do workshops here in the studio to help people to expedite, because it's a very easy instrument to pick up and play. What takes long is to bring out the soul of the instrument. And what I mean
Ah.
is the sensibility, the emotion, the how you can paint a picture with the sounds. But to get the sound, it's very easy. So now I do workshops here, and I have a really good friend, Danny Jordan, that does a lot of my flutes. And so I sell his flutes for this workshop, and it's a beautiful but I've been doing it because I see how music, and it's important as a person that does sound therapy or vibrational therapy. Some people call it sound healing. It's important also to know music, because if you know music, um, um, you know what dissonance is, you know what harmonics, and being sensitive, being a person that plays to target an emotion of healing, of their own healing that they're orchestrating on their, it's not me doing it, them doing it through themselves from the creator. I'm just doing the soundtrack to it. So it's important for me to know when people come in, not to do massive groups, to do more intimate groups where I can see what certain things are not. Like, for instance, gong, it's to be played, for in my opinion, short bursts. It's such a hard instrument. If you do long periods, it might interrupt your sleep, stuff like that.
Oh,
So
really? Wow.
yeah, so different things happen with to your body energetically.
Ariel, you mentioned that you want to make sure it's a small group.
Mhm.
Are you reading the room, so to speak? Are you sensing what music
Feeling
to
it.
play based on the
Yeah.
people in the room?
Yes. I feel I always start by inviting our guides, inviting anybody that's with pure love to come in and help me facilitate something personal that will help move, touch, and inspire the individuals in the group. That's and one of the, and I always do. Since I'm a multi-instrument, there's a journey that I put people on through music, and in the beginning of that, there's a certain thing that I always do in every single one, which is like this flutter with the Native American flute before I start going on to other instruments, and that flutter is, in my mind's eye, is the invitation for all light. It's like, so it's like the same uh imprint that I always bring in, and I visualize it in my mind's eye how it's being poured in. So and it always starts with this certain flutter that I do with the instrument, and it kind of brings in that. And that's a cool thing about the native flute, is that it's in the pentatonic scale, which it's a scale of nature. It's a scale where you listen to it and you feel like you've taken off a heavy suit. Like, I feel good.
Well, I love this. I love what you're talking about. So you use the sound to kind of it represents in your mind the invitation
Mm.
to the greater good of everybody in the room. That's how I would
Yeah,
phrase it.
yeah, yeah.
And so what size do you prefer when you do something like this? 10,
Yeah, 10. I don't do 20. I like usually around 10. 10 is a good size for me when it comes to a facility, because then I can walk around the room also and do personal, like I have, you know, different chimes and different things that are very whimsical, that it triggers the childlike joy that we had, playing at a
Yeah.
park.
I,
So
well,
I like to be able spend time with people, you know.
well, it's interesting. So I just did this speaking thing this past weekend, and I do similar thing. Right before I stand up before an audience, I always say, what is mine to tell them? What is mine to share with these people? And when I say mine, I mean through spirit. Spirit, what is it the best thing that I can help these people with? And I will tell you, I always try to prepare, right? I have my notes, I have my bullet points,
And you
but
go like this.
yeah, you have to learn to just go with
Trust,
it.
trust, yeah. Surrender
And
to it.
you can only prepare so much, because
Mm,
the minute you walk in, if you're truly listening and feeling the room,
mhm.
just being present to them, who knows where it will go.
Yeah,
Same thing on my recent retreat. I had an agenda planned for every day. I'd sit down we have a morning huddle, and I'd sit down and feel the room, and suddenly spirit saying, throw that out, you're going to do this. And I'm like,
yeah.
where? And the amazing thing is, what does come in is always the most incredible activity or idea, and it shifts them. So, and I'm like, where,
And,
where does that come
and if you
from?
had your piece of paper, it would be limiting to that
Right,
possibility, right? Awesome.
right.
And let me ask you something. Have you felt, I know for myself, it's such, like when I allow and trust God to speak through me, it's almost, I become almost like the spectator of like I
Uh-huh.
feel like I feel like God's, for myself, speaks more poetically and puts things that I've never even thought, and makes paint like a picture, or just a phrasing of something, or metaphor, that are not in this guy's vernacular. It's different. You know what I
It's
mean?
so I'm serious. I haven't seen the taping of what I did, because I'm like, I want to hear what I said. I'm just, it's almost like what came through me. And that's
Uh,
why when people ask, I came off the stage and people are like asking me questions. I'm like, I don't. What I love about this conversation is you do that with art,
mhm.
and you do it with music, and I do it with art and with public speaking.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and so, listeners, you're not trapped in one art form. These are skills.
yeah,
You can use it when you go out to dinner with your partner, and it's something that you practice, and it can be used everywhere, when you're driving on a highway, when you're dealing with social media, right?
yeah, yeah. With life itself. Yeah, yeah.
Very life itself. And that's why when I wrote my book, The Spiritual Artist, I thought, these are life lessons. These aren't just lessons about making art.
Or, of course, yeah. They're one and the same. That's why it's so brilliant, that you're doing that, and help give people permission. Sometimes they just need a little permission to, like, just go ham. Let's do
Right.
it.
And and it's wonderful when you use music. I will tell you, this time on the retreat, people just did the wildest things, so creative. And when I looked around the room, what made my heart just so warm is everybody was doing something different.
Uh,
They weren't doing CJ Miller. They weren't
no,
doing
yeah,
their version. How many art classes have you taken, right? Where
yeah,
all the students are painting what the teacher does. It's like, uh,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it
That's why
just
I didn't
breaks.
go to art school.
It breaks my heart. So we have sometime we'll work this in. We'll work something. I would love to do something where we did a music art um, workshop or something. So
When's your retreat again? When's the next one you said?
my next one, I have one here in Dallas in November
The one in Santa Fe.
in the
Is
Santa Fe is next May.
next May.
Yeah, and it's
Because
a
I go to Taos and Ojo Caliente,
oh
those
yeah,
are
I've been
some of
there.
my favorite places.
Well, you know
So
what? look at the date, because we could work something in there. I would love to do something where people are painting to your music.
Okay. Yeah, it'll
You
be an
know,
honor. It'll be
yeah.
an
So we'll talk about that. So is there
Okay.
anything else that we've talked about a lot, and it's
Well, this has been such a joy, man. Like I said, this is a kinship, an artisan kinship, but it also someone that's on the path and understands, and the fact that you are are a steward to help people, give them permission, make them live the artist way of for themselves. It is so brilliant. I find it. I'm championing you from over here from Florida, and I think it's beautiful. And as for myself, I guess what I want to leave is um to live an inspired life. That's because that's something that exercises what every single ancient text talks about, is being childlike. When we get excited when we're like a child, and also remember what we spoke about in our last a few minutes ago, that it's not about anybody's team. It's about we're all connected, and
we're all
that's what we
connected, the same breath.
celebrate. Yeah, we're all connected to the same breath. And you can always find me at arielbasso.com or on Instagram. That's easier because I'm always there. Ariel Basso, Basso _art. And yeah, I'm working on a documentary right now that's going to be out next year. That's going to be yeah, stay tuned for that.
One of the things that you've demonstrated listening to you talk is your ability to follow the breadcrumbs, really, all your life. You just have been very open to seeing the synchronicities, which I would call creative intelligence leading you to your thumbprint of who you are, to the individual uniqueness of you. And it's amazing. And that's probably where little Chris is a little jealous
Oh,
with the art, but there's always another layer, but I'm very impressed with that.
oh, thank you. And I think it's very important for us to follow, let our song not to be, our song needs to get out, whatever that song is for you. We all are one of one,
Right.
and we're all part of the oneness. And it's, how beautiful is that?
All right. Well, thanks again for being on the show.
Oh man, my pleasure.
L-
It's an honor. Thank
Listeners, I want to point out something about Ariel. He reached out to me. I think he found me on Instagram, and so I am available for that. If you're an artist or someone that loves these topics and wants to share your story, do that. Reach out to me. Message me on Instagram or Facebook. I'm also on TikTok. And tell me, reach out and put your story, because this has been a great interview, and I love talking to you about this.
Yeah,
So.
likewise, brother. I'm putting it out now. Hopefully, I'll definitely see you in May.
Oh, I would love it. I would love it. That's so exciting. So I hope so.
Yeah,
Okay. So listeners, keep being creative, go out there and be a spiritual artist. Thank you.
thank you for you.
Thanks again for listening to the Spiritual Artist Podcast. Whether you're watching this show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, or iHeartRadio, make sure you choose the subscribe button so that you will receive updates when new segments are released. Most importantly, be still, listen, and know that you are a spiritual artist.